Chris.
To make sure that we can get people quickly and efficiently to wherever it is that they actually use it that's greener than blind. Hotel probably out at Shoreline I think is better to mitigate. We don't want the congestion here downtown, I don't think, and it's greener. You want people who are going to be there for business to be able to walk to those businesses. I think it's just much more convenient, makes more sense. I was at a bike and ped meeting the other night. There are a tremendous set of recommendations from large to small that we can start with as soon as we want. I just think we need to incorporate a lot of them into the general plan, the Grand Boulevard proposals, and making sure that we are a biker and pedestrian friendly city. And green construction, again, it starts with council. We need to set the standards. We need to create a rating system so that you can hold them accountable. And we need to make sure the green standards are especially built into the high density housing because it's easier to do it now than it is to go back and retrofit. And it's a lot cheaper to do it now. And you're going to have the biggest effect when you actually do it on those denser housing or denser development.
So for those of you who submitted questions that this from council members to from potential council members to potential council members. The order in which this sheet was given to me is John Inks, Laura Macias, Chris Clark, Alicia Crank, John McAllister, Mike Kasperzak, Tom Means, Diana Wang. So we have 9 questions, 1 minute for the response. The question for John: affordable housing that allows for diversity of incomes continues to be an issue for Mountain View. It will become even more of a problem as the current economic crisis works its way down from Wall Street to Main Street. How will you, as a city council member, use the housing element due this year to ensure that all current and future residents of Mountain View are able to thrive in the coming 5 years?
All right. The answer that you want to read is the answer that I gave to affordable housing, and I told him I don't know. I don't know how to answer everything that he wanted to do, especially with our current ordinance. What I did do, though, was I met with the League of Women Voters group that has shown where this type of housing that Bruce is referring to has been done in other cities, and what are the possibilities for nonprofits. So what I indicated was actually achieving something like that, which is pretty lofty. I admitted that I didn't not know how to do it, but I'm willing to work with people and listen to other groups, on their ideas and try and implement them to solve a very, very tough housing and social problem.
Thank you, John. If you thought John's question was long, wait until you hear the one for Laura. This is actually written as a 2-part question, but I allowed it because the first part is just a 1 or 2 word answer, and then the rest is asking for your opinion. At the League of Women Voters Forum, everyone agreed that the city should comply with the state and ABAG housing allocation, although many didn't agree with the allocation itself. What level of growth do you believe the ABAG allocation represents if the housing was actually built? Slow, moderate, or high growth? And, so that's the slow, moderate, or high growth is the, pick one. And given that only 650 units have been completed in the last 5 years, how would you characterize that level of housing growth?
Okay. How would I characterize the current allocation of 2,500 units? And let me clarify first, this is not a state requirement. It's a loosely grouped organization of governments that base your requirements based on how much you've zoned. So if you're a city that hasn't zoned very many housing, or very much housing, then you won't have very high requirements. I would say it's pretty high level of growth. If you look at the other cities, and you can do this in all the 9 counties that are involved, we have one of the highest amounts allocated, and especially for a city our size. I would dispute the comment that there have only been 650 units, residential units created, because it's actually more like 1,200 to 1,300.
Thank you. Chris, you work for a startup and admittedly do not have established roots in Mountain View. Given the economic climate, if the company you work for were to shut down and you lost your job, do you expect the voters to believe that you would forego a new job elsewhere rather than staying in Mountain View and remaining on the city council?
Wow. That's a very cynical viewpoint, but so let's say Loop does go. I work at Loop here, OMVNA between View and Street. So let's say Loop goes under. When I came, I wanted to come back to Mountain View. I was in a rotational program where they bounced me around every few months at AT&T. So I finally got the job at Loop, was able to finally get back to Mountain View. And I would say, and one of the choices that I had was between a job at Google and a job at Loop. And I think I've remained on pretty good terms with the folks at Google. Maybe there's a hiring freeze. But I mean, of course I'm willing, I mean, if I get the honor to serve on council, of course I'm going to stay. I mean, I'll commute to wherever I have to go, whether it's San Francisco or whatnot. And I think, I think I'll work with whatever employer I end up with to make sure that that works, because this is obviously going to take priority over that. It's taken priority over my job at Loop. I'm taking the month off unpaid, and we may move me to part-time status if I get elected.
John, you keep the position open, right?
I can serve cookies and cream.
But I don't know if you're qualified.
Oh, yeah. It's so mean tonight.
Let's keep them at this. Alicia, you spent 10 years in the investment wealth management industry. What exactly were your jobs during that period?
Sure. I worked my way up. I worked in the what we call our institutional trust division of the bank, which is corporate trust banking, corporate investment. I did the first couple of years I spent as an administrative assistant, and I worked my way up to an analyst and a senior analyst into a relationship manager, of which the last position actually moved me back to Michigan for a year to help them start up a web-based program that no one else in Michigan was able to do because of my experience here in California. I touched on this a little bit earlier on, but as first the administrator over retirement services, I was in charge of making sure that our clients who use our retirement products, I took care of their investments, made sure that we were looking out for their different investment options, and then reviewing it to see if we can do better at some point. The latter part, which was the last 4 years, I spent in cash management, and that's it.
For John McAllister, please name the community efforts that you have led, and what did you learn from them?
Okay, community efforts there. Well, being a father of 2 children, 2 high school kids, one's in high school, one's at Graham. I spent all the time that I had when they were growing up involved in the school district. I was on the school side council, I was on the treasurer of the PTA, I was a sports coach, so I was a fundraiser for the Mountain View Education Foundation. So those are the type of community events that I was working with. I was on the program committee over at the YMCA. That was one that reviewed the programs to see how it could broadly serve the community at large. What other community events did I do? I was involved in baseball, basketball. Through the Baskin Robbins, we do a fundraiser for the fire department, which is a big night that we call 31 Scoop Night. So we have the fire department down there in Engine, so that's always a big community event. We do a big event for the Education Foundation at the beginning of the year. We have about 500 people come to those.
Thank you very much. For Mike Kasperzak, how do you have affordable housing without increasing density?
I don't think you can. One of the things that I believe about affordable housing is, one, that the city is not responsible for doing all of the affordable housing. We're not going to address the affordable housing needs by having more and more places like San Antonio Place, as great as it is. I think the only way we can really address the issue of affordable housing is to have redevelopment of existing old and substandard now apartment stock into newer, higher density apartments that will have an affordable unit, at least 10% of the units will be affordable. We have a lot of apartments that are over 50 years old. They're dangerous. They're like the type that were down in Northridge earthquake, and they're not seismically safe. But we're going to have to have, I think apartments are the only way we're really going to meet the affordable housing needs. You don't have to make a $300,000 to $500,000 down payment to get one.
Tom, isn't the study of economics more theory than practical?